Hi, this is Shaun. In this video I'm going to go over how to quickly use the landscape mode in UDK and also how to quickly make a material for it. So let's get started. The first thing is to get good reference material for your landscape. Just a really excellent reference page. So one of the things I think that's very confusing for a lot of people is understanding how to figure out the exact dimensions. So you can actually just refer to the recommended landscape sizes that UDK offers and read the components. It's basically the power, the rule of thumb is it's powers of 2 minus 1. And that's just the way UDK works. It depends on figuring out efficiencies. So I'm going to launch the landscape tool and I'm going to create one. So let's say 128 by 128, and I'm going to create that landscape. Okay, so that landscape's been created. I'm going to adjust my tool, and I can adjust my speed of movement here a little bit. It's a pretty large landscape, and I can sculpt by holding down the control key. And I can push in by holding down the control shift. So there's a bunch of mountains, and there I've sculpted some negative space in there. You can try different tools with this. This one smooths things out a little bit. We've got one that will flatten. There's different erosion tools that I think are pretty cool. They help to create a fairly realistic looking topology if you use them right. And there's erosion and hydraulic erosion, which acts more like as if there was a water that had affected your terrain. So once you've got that all figured out, you can actually add noise too. Then what you're going to want to do is get a material all ready for this level. So, and it's much more of a different workflow than previously in order to do the materials. So let's just quickly put one together. Okay, so what I've done is I've created a material, and I've copied several textures from the UDK game in order to create this example. So let's get those into my material editor here. So just drag that onto the screen, and also just do one at a time. It seems like that's what it wants. Drag one at a time in, or you can select and hit T. So that creates a texture sample. Looks like I've got that one already. I'm going to do the grass. Alright, great. So we've got the textures in. Now I'm going to search for terrain. So there's the terrain weight and the terrain switch. There's multiple ways of doing this, but this is the way that's worked for me. I think there's more advanced ways of doing this. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this layer by hitting Control W and hook this up. So basically the texture samples go into the layer areas, and each layer plugs into the base. And you need to name your layers. So you can call them by either what you want to remember them by, like you call this grass. You call it like layer 1 and layer 2 if you wanted. Whatever is more helpful. And we'll call this stone. I'm going to duplicate those. Plug in my normals into them. Goes for the rocks. And if you wanted, you could also do a preview weight for each of these. So, for example, if I wanted to see what this looked like, blended 50%, I could put in 0.5 here. And on the grass, I could plug in 0.5. Let's just store this. The terrain coordinates is for tiling. It's similar to a texture coordinate index, but it's specifically for terrains and also for landscapes. But we'll save that for a second and just compile this right now. So pay special attention to the fact that we've got those named layers. So let's go back in the landscape mode, and we're going to switch to target layer and hit edit. It's also useful to save the package before you do this part. So I'm going to add a layer name, so we'll call this grass. And if we don't see the swatches, so I'm going to do the other one too. I called it rock, right? Double check. I called it stone. So the reason that the swatches, we should see the grass and the stone appearing, and that's because I simply haven't plugged in the landscape material into the landscape. So let's do that. So here's my landscape material. Plug that in. Okay, so it finished compiling, and in fact it turned white, so that's kind of funny. And let's give this a shot here and try painting. Okay, so now that we've got the map plugged into the terrain, so here's the landscape, I should say the landscape materials plugged in, we can start painting, and usually I would sort of do paint with the material that would be underneath, but it should work with either. And it usually takes a second for it to load the texture once you've selected the swatch. Okay, so I'm going to just paint that texture all over the landscape. And then I'm going to paint some grass in as well. You can make as many layers as you want. I think it's taking a little extra time in order to load the grass just because I'm recording this. And so one of the things that you'll notice is that the tiling on the grass and on the mountain is just it's extremely low. If we were to play this level, it would just be sort of ridiculously low texture-wise. So what we need to do is we need to go in and adjust our material. Wow, never seen that happen before. Yeah, let's go in and adjust our material. So, okay, so I'm back in the material editor, and I've also plugged in preview weights into the layer grass and layer stone areas for the normal maps. So I'm going to plug in the terrain coordinates into all of these layers, and you can have separate terrain coordinate nodes for any of your textures. In fact, I usually have a few because some textures will look fine at a lower density and some textures will need repetition. It just depends. Usually the areas that your player is going to be walking will need more repetition. So probably the areas for grass, but if the mountains are way above your character, probably get away with a lot more, a lot less texture resolution in those areas. Okay, so I've attached the terrain coordinates and I've also changed the mapping scale. You can see now we have much more texture density in here, and so you could probably adjust this to your liking. And you can also see that the normal maps are kicking in. I would do spec maps as well. That would probably be nice. So what goes well with this, and I'm just going to mention it, and I'm not going to show this, but is the foliage mode. You can also paint foliage, so you could sort of get grass You could get grass static meshes. You can drag those into here and then treat those as a paintbrush as well. Just paint static meshes in your browser. And those can be affected by wind, and you can sort of do all sorts of things. Just be careful, you can get pretty dense very quickly. So, thanks so much for watching, and have a good night.